Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this session of Spokane Public Schools Keep Learning Series for Literacy. Today's lesson is for all our fifth graders out there, and any child who is interested and is welcome to join us. My name is Mrs. Rich, and I'm a fifth grade teacher at Woodridge Elementary in Spokane Schools. I will be your teacher today. I'm so glad you are participating with me today. This is our first lesson in the series. Today, we will be learning about cause and effect and how to use text evidence to support our thinking. For today's lesson, you will need pencil and paper. I will give you a moment to gather your supplies. Okay, let's get started. Today's lesson is mountain climbing. I hope that you have a jacket ready and some ski gloves, because today we're going to learn how to climb Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Everest. Let's head on. Okay, before we get started reading our text, we're going to look at what cause and effect is. So we will read both articles, and then we'll be taking a look at cause and effect. So I have a little chart here to help us. So cause is the reason for something happening, and effect is what happened. So cause and effect explains why things happen. As we're reading, you can look for specific signal words like so, because, therefore, since, if, then, so that, without, cause, effect, how, and explain. And something that I find is really helpful is to be looking at this phrase. When I say because of, that's going to tell me the cause. And I say this happened because it's cold out, I am wearing my jacket. It's not because I'm wearing my jacket, it got cold. That can't happen. So this phrase helps us make sure we get things in the right order. And then we'll come back with an independent activity on cause and effect. So let's get going. We have a lot to do today because we're climbing Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Everest in our reading today. Meet you back here in a minute. All right, we're going to get started with the article, Going Up a Mountain. I'm going to be highlighting after we've done a complete read through of both texts. And then we'll start going back and looking at cause and effect. Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world. It is located in the country of Nepal. It is 8,848 meters tall. This means it is just over 5.5 miles in height. Until 1953, nobody had successfully climbed Mount Everest, though many had tried. Mount Everest has steep slopes. Many climbers have slipped and fallen to their deaths. The mountain is very windy. Parts of it are covered with snow. Many mountaineers would get caught in snowstorms and unable to climb. The mountain is rocky. Sometimes during snowstorms, rocks would tumble down the slopes of the mountain. Any climbers trying to go to the mountain might be risking their lives. There is also very little oxygen atop Mount Everest. This is because the oxygen in the air reduces as we go higher. This means that it is difficult for climbers to breathe. The climbers usually take oxygen in cylinders to breathe. If they do take oxygen tanks, they have to carry extra weight on their backs. This slows them down. In 1953, a New Zealand-based climber, Edmund Hillary, and a Nepalese climber, Tenzing Norgay, climbed Mount Everest for the first time. They both took photographs on the peak. Then they buried some sweets on the peak as a gesture to celebrate their climb. But they could not stay for long because it was windy and snowy. They soon came down. Later, many people asked Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay which of them had reached the peak first. They both said it was a team effort. It didn't matter because they had gone together. After Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, many other climbers went up the mountain. In 1975, Junko Tabei became the first woman to climb Mount Everest. In 1980, Reinhold Messner became the first man to climb the mountain alone. Until then, climbers had always gone up the mountain in teams. The teams would help fix ropes, set up camps, and make food. But Reinhold Messner went alone to the top. Reinhold Messner was a great climber. Back in 1978, he had climbed Everest without carrying any extra oxygen. He said it was man against mountain. Wow, that sounds impressive. In Recent years, many have climbed Mount Everest. As of 2010, 3,142 people had climbed the mountain. Many climbers fly to the city of Kathmandu in Nepal. In Kathmandu, many see the royal palace. They can buy Everest-themed t-shirts, books, and CDs. Once climbers are settled in Kathmandu, they meet Sherpas. The Sherpas are locals who have grown up in the mountains near Mount Everest. Many Sherpas are experts at climbing, and they act as guides for climbers. The Sherpas also carry equipment such as bags, ropes, and tents. And I'm thinking that if I went, I would definitely get Sherpas because they've been up that mountain several times and they could probably keep me safe. As of 2013, the equipment for climbing Mount Everest cost almost $8,000. The climbers may also buy oxygen cylinders, which can cost about $3,000. Once the climbers have all their luggage, they go to a location called base camp. From base camp, they climb up Mount Everest. All right. So now we're heading to Africa so we can climb Mount Kilimanjaro, standing on the roof of Africa. The first thing Natalie Ingle did when she reached the Uhuru Peak on Mount Kilimanjaro was cry. It had been a hard and tiring trek up the mountain. After 8 long days on the trail, she was both mentally and physically exhausted. She posed for a few photos in thin air and looked around her. She watched the sunrise over the glaciers below and shivered as she tried to put the lens on her camera to take more pictures. She had just reached the summit of the highest mountain in Africa and the tallest freestanding mountain in the world. Mount Kilimanjaro is located in Tanzania, a country on the east coast of Africa, and it stands over 19,000 feet above sea level. It is a volcanic mountain with 3 volcanic cones, Kibo, Mwenzi, and Shira. Mwenzi and Shira are extinct volcanoes, meaning they won't ever go off again, while Kibo, the tallest cone, is dormant. This means that the volcano could erupt again. However, the last eruption took place more than 150,000 years ago. Natalie, who is a freelance photographer, decided to climb to Mount Kilimanjaro for a simple reason. She wanted to raise money to help victims of domestic abuse in both the United States and Tanzania. She joined a team of 5 other women, and together they raised $10,000 toward this cause. In addition to asking her friends and family to donate to the fund, she held a fundraiser at her apartment in Brooklyn. She sold several photographs and even offered to shave her head if people donated $1,000. Fortunately for her hair, she didn't reach this goal, and in the pictures of her standing on the summit, her ponytail is tucked beneath a wool hat. Natalie is a runner, so to train for her hike up the mountain, she signed up for 2 half marathons to keep herself motivated. I also tried to teach myself to drink lots more water regularly, she says. In higher altitudes, dehydration is more likely to occur because water vapor is lost from the lungs at a higher rate. Also, because climbers lose a lot of sweat from hiking many hours each day, it's important that they hydrate frequently to prevent illnesses related to dehydration. People climbing Mount Kilimanjaro and other high peaks also face the risk of developing altitude sickness. Altitude sickness may occur in heights above 8,000 feet and is a reaction to high altitudes. In higher altitudes, the amount of oxygen available decreases. This makes it harder to function mentally and physically. In very extreme cases, altitude sickness can be fatal. Some symptoms include headaches, dizziness, nausea, and weakness. To avoid getting altitude sickness, it is important to ascend or climb the mountain very slowly to give your body time to get used to the decreased amount of oxygen available. Natalie says that she seems to have been the luckiest one out of our team. She explains that although we all came from sea level homes, I've spent more time off and on in the mountains. And she was lucky. Most of the other women on her team had stomach aches and headaches throughout the trek. One of her teammates vomited when she reached the top, but Natalie only experienced a headache when she reached the summit over 10,000 feet higher than when most altitude-related symptoms begin to occur. She was never scared on the trek, even though one of the most dangerous parts involved using all 4 limbs to climb a very nearly vertical cliff they call the Barranca Wall. For her, the most memorable part of the climb was the unforgettable landscapes. She trekked through rainforests and across deserts and glaciers. And she says, one of the most stunning things I've ever seen in my life was at sunset on day 2. An ocean of clouds stretched out below us, slowly streaming over the peak of a shorter mountain nearby. It looked exactly like a white slow-motion waterfall. But it wasn't just the climb or the fact that she stood atop the roof of Africa that Natalie loved about her time in Tanzania. She returned knowing that her climb would help those in need. Okay, so we've taken a look at both articles. Now we're going to stick with this particular article, and we're going to come up and we're going to start looking for cause and effect. So remember our keywords, because of this event happened, what we're looking for. So we're going to go through and start highlighting. We're going to start with first paragraph here. The first thing Natalie Ingle did when she reached the Uhuru Peak on Mount Kilimanjaro was cry. It had been a hard and tiring trek. After 8 long days on the trail, she was both mentally and physically exhausted. She posed for a few photos in thin air and looked around her. She watched the sunrise over the glaciers below and shivered as she tried to put the lens on her camera to take more pictures. She had just reached the summit of the highest mountain in Africa and the tallest freestanding mountain in the world. So what do you think? Do you see any cause and effects in there? If you said right here, 8 long days on the trail, she was both mentally and physically exhausted, you were correct. So we have to think about, do we say because she was mentally and physically exhausted, she spent 8 long days on the trail, or because she spent 8 long days on the trail, she became both mentally and physically exhausted? The second one is correct. We wouldn't spend days on the trail because we were exhausted. That's just silly. All right, we're going to skip paragraph 2 and we're going to head down to paragraph 3 here. Natalie, who is a freelance photographer, decided to climb Mount Kilimanjaro for a simple reason. She wanted to raise money to help victims of domestic abuse in both the United States and Tanzania. Now, I'm going to stop there because the reading gave us a huge clue. She said she's climbing Mount Kilimanjaro for a simple reason. What was that reason? To help victims of domestic abuse in both the United States and Tanzania. And she was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. So sometimes those key words will automatically tell us that, oh, there's cause and effect happening. She joined a team of 5 other women, and together they raised $10,000 toward this cause. In addition to asking her friends and family to donate to the fund, she held a fundraiser in her apartment in Brooklyn. So why did she hold a fundraiser? Because she wanted to raise the money for the domestic abuse victims. So we're going to go ahead and highlight this because this becomes another effect to the cause of raising money. All right, so let's start here. Natalie is a runner. Natalie is a runner, so to train for her hike up the mountain, she signed up for 2 half marathons to keep herself motivated. I also tried to teach myself to drink lots more water regularly, she says. In higher altitudes, dehydration is more likely to occur because water vapor is lost from the lungs at a higher rate. Also, because climbers lose a lot of sweat from hiking many hours each day, it's important they hydrate frequently to prevent illnesses related to dehydration. So there's several cause and effects happening here. She wanted to train for her hike. So what did she do? She signed up for 2 half marathons. Okay, let's keep reading. What else did you see? Climbers lose a lot of sweat from hiking. And so they need to hydrate frequently. Okay, let's read one more paragraph, then we'll move to our activity. People climbing Mount Kilimanjaro and other high peaks also face the risk of developing altitude sickness. Altitude sickness may occur in heights above 8,000 feet and is a reaction to high altitudes. In higher altitudes, the amount of oxygen available decreases. This makes it harder to function mentally and physically. In very extreme cases, altitude sickness can be fatal. Some symptoms include headache, dizziness, nausea, and weakness. To avoid getting altitude sickness, it is important to ascend the mountain very slowly to give your body time to get used to the decreased amount of oxygen available. So let's head up to the top. Did you notice anything at the beginning? You said in higher altitudes, the amount of oxygen decreases, and it's harder to function mentally and physically. Okay, now I know that there's several more cause and effects throughout the rest of the article. We're going to go ahead and stop there. We're going to head back to our activity. Okay, on my paper, I'm just setting up a little T-chart, and I'm labeling it cause and effect, and we're just going to use the highlighted information from our article and make sure that we're getting it into the correct column. So let's see what we have first here. 8 long days on the trail. Do you remember what the effect was for that 8 long days? She was mentally and physically exhausted. Okay, let's look at the next one. She wanted to help abuse victims in the US and Tanzania. So what was the effect? Oh, she climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Now let's double check that we have everything in the right section. Because she wanted to help abuse victims in US and Tanzania, this happened. She climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Does that sound right? Yes. That's a good test because sometimes we have the right cause and effect, we don't have it in the right order. She also has another effect. She still wanted to help those abuse victims, and so she held a fundraiser in Brooklyn. Okay. Trained for her hike up the mountain. What was the effect? She ran 2 half marathons. And finally, altitude sickness occurs. And what's one of the effects of altitude sickness? It's harder to function mentally and physically. I have enjoyed doing literacy with you today. Thank you for joining me as you keep learning from home. I look forward to seeing you again for our next session on KSPS, where we'll continue our climb up Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Everest.